Every week, both men and women lose their lives as a result of domestic violence.
For every 2 women that die, we never look at the other figure, 1 man also dies.
But all anyone in authority wants to talk about are the female deaths.
And 2 women, at least 2 women, die every week at the hands of their partners or their former partners.
I mean, if every week 2 white women and 1 black woman were killed due to domestic violence, what would a government minister say?
2 white women a week are killed as a result of domestic violence. This is a very serious problem for white women.
I don't think so, but they seem happy to ignore male deaths from domestic violence.
And 2 women, at least 2 women, die every week.
Women will, when they do murder, tend to use knives. Or another thing, they do get other people to do the murders. There's quite a lot of substitution there. Violent people are violent, be they men or women, and quite simply, if you look at what happens in a violent family, all the children are infected. This idea that the feminists try to put about, which only boys inherit the violence through the violent behaviour, is rubbish. Girls are equally affected.
I felt that if I wasn't there, she would take it out on them. The reason for believing that is that my wife was abused as a child. Her father left when she was 8. He was abused by his wife. He was told that the children would be safe if he went. He needed to go, otherwise he'd have a nervous breakdown. And the children would be safe, but they weren't. As soon as he'd gone, she started on them. She's incredibly like her mother, but she won't accept that there is anything about her that is like her mother because her mother abused her and because she doesn't want to see it.
Why do public service websites, such as the BBC's Hitting Home website, not bother to mention the 30 male deaths a year from domestic violence? The BBC says that 81% of domestic violence is caused by men, and that's why their site concentrates on women. That figure is not actually correct, but even if it was, is this explanation reasonable? If the BBC had a site on murder victims, would they say that most murder victims are white, so they'll ignore the deaths of black people? Would they say that most murder victims are men, and so they'll ignore the deaths of women? On their front page, they say they have information and help for anyone affected by domestic violence, but as soon as you look for this help, as if by magic, it becomes solely about women as victims and men as perpetrators.
Remember that you're not alone. There are thousands and thousands of women who have been through similar experiences to yours.
The 30 men a year who are killed by their wives or girlfriends are simply passed over by the media and by government. This strange silence makes no sense and can only be described for what it is. This is behaviour motivated by hate, just like racism. With the invented figure of 81% of victims being female, the BBC completely ignores well-established research that shows that domestic violence is most often caused and initiated by women. They further ignore the fact that the vast majority of violence against children is committed by women. The BBC goes on to justify why they ignore male victims. So what the BBC is saying is that because fewer men than women report that they're abused, because violence committed by men is so highly publicised, and violence committed by women is massively underreported, and because men killed by women account for only a quarter of all domestic violence deaths, the men are not worth talking about. As with so many issues to do with the relative suffering of men and women, the man's story is left untold. The reality is that female violence is deliberately ignored by the media, government and police, despite what their own figures tell them. The government seeks to deny the existence of female violence, and deny the existence of male victims. As their advertising so helpfully tells us, men can only be perpetrators of domestic violence. What kind of things go on with women being violent towards men? Because you simply don't hear about it. You never hear about it. Is it just the same stuff that might happen to women, or is it?
Well, according to the refuge that we use, and this was at the launch of our project last year, there were police there, social services, MPs and all that. She opened up and she said, I had no knowledge of what men were going through until they came to the refuge. She said, it's turned on its head all the notions that men and women couldn't mix together. That's the first thing. And secondly, she said, there is absolutely no difference between the men that come to the refuge and the women coming to the refuge in terms of what they've suffered and what their needs and supports are. She said they are absolutely identical. I can certainly say to you that the men phoning us up, in the physical stuff, they are punched, slapped and scratched, they're headbutted, they're kicked in the groin, they have knives stuck in them, they have ashtrays thrown at their heads, they have scalding water thrown over them, boiling fat, they are strangled. On the emotional side of things, nearly all of them are screamed and shouted at, so you imagine that with all the neighbours, and you imagine that sort of day after day, scream and shout, scream and shout, scream and shout. They get false allegations so that she'll go round and tell the neighbours that he's a violent man, so that they'll tell his friends that he's a violent man, so suddenly he goes down the pub and they'll turn away from him or they move off the table, so she'll isolate him.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
I do not hit my wife!
She'll threaten to call the police after she's assaulted him or they've had a row, and then in other cases that turn through to she does call the police. They'll make physical threats. I'll do this to you, I'll do that to you. They'll make death threats. You wait till you go to sleep, you'll have this knife in you. Like one of the chaps we've got runs a helpline in Scotland, 20 years he put up with it, and he was a teacher, and he said when it got to the end of the day, he said, I used to start to shake.
And these people don't leave because what?
Kids.
They feel tied to the other person?
Well, yeah, because he's got kids, so he said if I go, I don't see my kids. And it's simple as that. I leave, she'll just tell me, I mean a lot of these women say, don't you dare leave, you ever leave, because they know what they're doing, you ever do leave, you ain't going to ever see your kids again. So of course he would then go down on the statistics as a deserting father. He's deserted his family. The truth of the matter is that he's come to this agonising decision of, do I stay there for 20 years or 15 years or whatever it is, or do I say no, I've had enough of it, I'm leaving. And if it's that bad, then sometimes they leave. But this bloke, he didn't. He stuck it for 20 years. He came down here for the training course and stayed here. And he said, you're going to have to put me in a separate room, he said, because I still wake up in the night screaming.
You know, they talk to me about how two women are killed every week in England by their partners. One man is killed, but they don't account for the 3 who commit suicide every week. I know those men, and I know why they kill themselves. And this, the new prospect, which is where whether the woman likes it or not, the man is taken to court by the Crown Prosecution Service and prosecuted.
Getting convictions is still not easy. Sometimes proving guilt is impossible without a statement from the victim. Until this year, the police were unable to prosecute men whose partners wouldn't give evidence against them. But now the policy's changed, and charges can be brought even when a partner refuses to cooperate.
The reason most women won't press charges against a man is because they know perfectly well that violence is consensual between the two of them. It meets needs they have of each other.
He was about 6 feet, wearing jeans.
No, he was wearing a tracksuit.
Since when's a tracksuit made of denim?
Don't tell me what I saw, Morgan. He thinks it's funny making me feel like shit.
Do you think you could pick the man you saw out of a lineup?
I could. She's useless.
He's right. I have a terrible track record picking out men.
You know, it's too bad that psycho didn't cross your path.
Oh, you are... God!
Okay.
Arrest her!
Arrest me?
Okay, let's just calm down.
If it was me smacking her around, you lock me up!
Asshole.
Bitch!
Take her away.
And that is a matter of therapeutic care. That's what I'm saying in this paper. It's a matter of therapeutic care, that they have to look at their needs and what it does to them and their children. Just prosecuting him when she's going to go straight back to him as soon as he comes out is a total waste, A, of understanding, and B, of the use of the law.
We're ready to go.
We worked it all out. We'd like to drop the charges.
Well, you can just express your undying affection to the judge.
You're not letting us go?
Not till the van shows up to take you downtown.
Asshole.
Bitch!